All right, people. So I was trying to get to talk a little bit about the story arc of Justice League. That's why discussion is here with respect to Amy Adams' character Lois Lane, and I'm going to try my best to just get through with this really quickly because I think it's worth the while talking about the dimension and the depth to this character that we saw in Justice League. So Lois Lane was not a principal character in Justice League. All right. Nonetheless, Trent Osborne, shout out to Trent Osborne for seeing some depth there in her story arc. You got to take into consideration the trilogy of Superman. Okay. Basically, the one hero who's in all three movies is Superman. So this is really Superman's arc. This is Superman's story. And throughout the story, we get more depth with Lois Lane. Lois Lane has also lost hope. She's broken. She's in mourning. And she's trying to get back into the scheme of things, right? All this um I should have called this a spoiler discussion. I just have it as discussion 5. I don't know if I can edit that. Apparently I can't, which is not good. But this is a spoiler discussion on Justice League. Okay, guys, this is a spoiler. So we're spoiling the daylights out of this movie. When I get to editing it, I'll put spoiler in there. But yes, Lois Lane, she's broken after Superman died, and she's trying to get back into the scheme of things. And we catch up with her speaking to Mark Kent, and that discussion is very revealing because she's speaking about, she was always curious about the engine of the world. And in this case, that's actually a shout out to two different things. So the engine of the world is one, speaking about, it's a nice little allude to and a little reference to a little Easter egg to the world engine in Batman v Superman. But she's not really talking about the world engine, which was a conqueror of worlds. It destroyed worlds to create new worlds. This one is a little bit different. This one is about the engine of the world. And she was trying to understand how the world worked, what drove it. And she's actually speaking about hope. What makes us all human is hope. And it's interesting how this ties into the beginning of the movie where the little children are asking, what's the best thing you like about planet Earth? And Superman is probably going to say the hopefulness of the people, the potential for each person to be a force for good. I think he was going to say that. And it ends with Superman being that hope. But Lois Lane, she was investigating what drove people to continue living and continue working. Hope, love, faith. These are the three things, I mess around with. And I always believe that the best that comes out of us as human beings is when we're hopeful and when we have love, and when with that hope we get stronger and we actually have faith. We actually start to think this outcome can happen. And not only can it happen, but it will happen because I'll do everything in my power to make sure it happens. And then I'll hope for other things to go my way so it happens. So it's interesting that Lois Lane, she was investigating what made us all tick and move. And she found that in Kal-El, of all places, this stranger. She didn't know him as Kal-El. She always called him Clark. Even Batman calls him Clark, his Earth name, because Clark basically helps us to identify Superman as one of us. So we don't call him Kal-El. We call him Clark. And that's very important to understand. If you listen to Wonder Woman speak about Superman, she calls him Kal-El. She calls him Kal. She calls him by his real name. She sees him for what he really is. Because she also is not human. She comes from the gods. She comes from the Amazons. They are not humans. So she can refer to Clark and basically call him Kal to encapsulate his full identity. So what's interesting about BVS, Man of Steel, and Justice League through Lois Lane's eyes is that Lois Lane sees Kal-El as a human. She sees the humanity in him, and she addresses him like Clark. And you will see that also Bruce Wayne, he tends to address Kal-El not as Kal-El or as Superman, but as Clark as well, because he sees the humanity. And now going back to Lois Lane, just so you guys will understand where I'm coming from, Lois Lane realized that Superman epitomized the driving force, the hope of humanity, what keeps the engine running every day. So when she talks about the engine of the world, she was looking for truth and the engine of the world. She's really speaking about Kal-El. And she said, so that you don't mistake her, when it ran. When it ran means when Kal-El was there, when there was hope. So that's what that theme in there is about, which I wanted to really emphasize on, because Lois Lane plays a big role in this movie, even though she's not in the movie for the bulk of the time. The most of the time we're with the heroes. But she plays a pivotal role in this movie. Of course, you know, her and helping him to remember his identity is one of which is a film movie, but they move off. They're not in the midst of the battle and the fight that Batman. So I want to talk a little bit more about Lois Lane, but first let me just invite Artu Le Monem. Yes, sir. It's nice to see you again. I only have a couple minutes here. I'm sorry about that, but I'm glad that you're here. And yes, you managed to get into the stream. Welcome, man. Welcome. You can also invite a lot of other people you may know to these streams. I will be streaming, talking a lot about Justice League. We'll go through discussion after discussion on this movie. I may not be able to go see this movie today because I do have to at least make an effort to go out there and sell something, but it's been a sort of an obsession of mine for the last couple of days. And I like talking about virtuous things because this movie definitely directly translates to everyday life that we have. Now, in the movie, there is a section in the movie. Anyway, let's go back to Lois Lane, because there's another dimension to Lois Lane here that I think is very important for us to understand. So Lois Lane was broken. She was not able to hold it together after Clark died. But do you notice that throughout the movie, if you pay attention, Lois Lane has accepted that ring. It's on her left hand in her middle finger. So the central finger she has the ring on it. And it's interesting that when Mark Kent starts to talk to her as if she's her daughter, that Lois Lane is comforted. You can actually see her smile. She wants to cry a lot. She's in between smiling and crying. Her mother, as they speak about the painful stuff, you know, talking about after Superman's gone, how the world has gotten worse. You hear Alfred also express these themes. I do not recognize this world. He acknowledges to Bruce that he doesn't recognize it. And I think it's because of the superpowered beings that suddenly come out and they're everywhere. And also, I think because the world is not as simple as it used to be for him. And I find that wonderful as well. So when looking at this movie, there's so many layers to it that come off of Batman v Superman. That's what I think gives it its inherent value and why I value it above Man of Steel and above Wonder Woman. I don't think it quite touches the Batman v Superman level, but I've been watching this movie now. I've seen it 5 times so that I can see the virtues in it. And I'm telling you, man, we have a long ways to go with these discussions. These discussions can go for weeks if we want to. But I wanted to highlight Lois Lane, who was not a principal character. So one of the things she spoke about was the engine of the world, which we know is hope, and she had lost it. And she spoke to Superman. She said, I wasn't strong. But notice his response to her. His response to her was, I was the idiot that left you. And I thought that was very comforting in 2 different ways. One, a lot of times, the things that matter the most to us, sometimes we have to let go for the betterment of things which are much bigger than those things. Kal-El, looking back on the situation, thought that he may have approached it in a slightly juvenile and almost amateur way. And he's the one that tells her he's the idiot. Another thing that I thought, whether it's Joss Whedon, I think it's Joss Whedon that did this line, or maybe not. Well, I think it was because it was CGI'd. The line where Lois Lane asked him, how did it feel to come back? And he said, itchy. And then he said, weird. I thought that was very interesting and intriguing. Of the many people who have been resuscitated from surgeries where they've clinically been dead and they came back and stuff like that, we found out that a lot of these people speak about extra dimensional things happening to them. And also they speak about how strange it is at first regaining their senses. And I thought that this movie did an excellent job of showing Clark regaining his senses, even his vision, how to focus in, how to dial in, to hear all these different voices, to focus in on something. And I'm pretty sure that would have been a very confusing moment for him because he didn't even know he did. But yet he's aware that he died at a certain time, and his memories and his recollection of his all-star fire can come back to him. That moment was different. It was a different moment. Most people were talking about they should have talked the Ring story, but I actually think Lois Lane asking him that question is actually more valuable than if he were to say something to her and talk about the ring that was in the advertisement. Now, let me tell you why. Lois Lane was talking about her curiosity for the world and the engine that ran it. And she was always looking at it because she wanted to know the truth. So it's not strange, and it's very much consistent to what Lois Lane did to Clark. Let me tell your story in Man of Steel. And then Clark corrects her. Now she starts the dialogue again, and this time she says to Clark, how did it feel to come back? You know, she had asked a bunch of questions in Man of Steel. You know, where do you come from? And she said a bunch of things. And this time she approaches it similar to Man of Steel, where she says, how did it feel to come back? It's a curiosity with the truth. It's a curiosity with what drives the engine. So it's consistent with what she said to her mother-in-law when she speaks to Clark, instantaneously asking him certain questions. Now, the other part is she said, I wasn't strong enough. And then the other part that I thought was very interesting was this time, in contrast to BVS, she let Superman go. Before that, she didn't want to let him go. She didn't want him to go into danger. But this time, she gives him the permission to leave. But she gives the caveat, but don't go and kill yourself this time. And I thought that's a follow-up to BVS, showing that even Lois Lane begins to understand the stakes in something. And she has evolved to the point, like Batman, that she can allow herself to let go of that she loves for the betterment of everyone. She couldn't handle it the first time. And she probably will have difficulty if he dies the second time. That's just why the caveat. But she lets him go. Whereas in the first movie, she couldn't let him go to face Doomsday. Another very interesting thing that I just want to point out is that Zack Snyder continuously uses symmetry in his movies. And he continuously shows the evolution of his characters. In terms of Batman, Batman was so afraid of Superman in BVS that he decided he had to kill him. And he grit his teeth to kill Superman. And he worked out his plan, and he was one-upping. In this movie, Batman, for the first time, he has a plan, don't get me wrong. But for the first time, he's willing to make that trade, his life for Superman's. Remember, in Batman v Superman, Lex Luthor wanted Superman to make a trade between Batman and his mother. It's interesting hearing Batman now echo the sentiments that Lex Luthor would have said, saying, I'm willing to make the trade of my life for the lives of the world, for Superman's life. It's so incredible seeing this full circle of stuff, seeing Chris Terrio's script writing come full circle. And I just find it wonderful that Lois Lane, who had problems letting go of Superman, now was able to let him go. Beautiful, beautiful. And it took his resurrection from the dead for that to happen. So things come full circle in this movie. And I think it's a beautiful closure to the saga that Zack Snyder put forward. Now let me see what you guys have been saying. And I'll just answer some of your questions. And if you want to be involved in this discussion, you can also join this hangout. I'll give you the link on your channel if you so wish. But I have to wrap this up because it's time to move. I really wish I could stay a little longer, but I can't. Let me just read off some of your comments. Superman. This is R2 Lemon. Superman being unable to answer could also mean that he couldn't decide what to say because he likes many things about Earth and couldn't just give one answer. Well, he was about to give an answer and then everything just cut off. You know, R2 Lemon. Diana has always called him Kal-El. Yes, absolutely. She has always called him Kal-El. She called him by his birth name, what his parents called him. And that's because she's also a deity. She's also a god. So remember, we're dealing with gods and men. And Superman is but relatable to men. You see, he's a man. He is not a true man. Like the iconography of Horus or Jesus, you know. Vega Thorne, they will have an actual wedding for her and Clark at one point. I don't think so. I don't think so because Lois Lane is still there. Clark is pretty much, he loves Lois. You saw that Lois was the key that they spoke about in BVS, that the Flash spoke to Bruce Wayne about in BVS. She's the key. And as Bruce kind of also explained, when Diana said, you know, so she said something about you had a backup plan or something. He said, well, you know, you said that you have to appeal to the heart. So I appealed to his heart to get him back because he might come without a soul, you know, that kind of thing. Vega Thorne, Flash could be his best man since he and Bruce are still becoming buddies. Bruce is, Superman. I don't think Superman's ever going to marry Wonder Woman. I don't think that's happening. They have a lot in common. They are quite similar in many respects, but I don't think that's happening. I think, if anything, he's going to marry Lois Lane. She has that engagement ring on her hand, so I think he's going to marry her. But you guys may see something between Batman and Wonder Woman, and it's they sort of, Wonder Woman sees Steve Trevor in Batman. That's why she's been protecting him all along. She's been protecting him. She's been eyeing him from afar. Again, notice Wonder Woman shows up at his doorstep, not he shows up at her doorstep. When he went to crash Lex Luthor's party in BVS, she was there already, and she was eyeing him. So she's had her eye on him for a while, and she must see some of the virtues that Steve Trevor had in him, even though he's much more rougher than Steve Trevor, and he's very rough around the edges, and he's very flawed. Steve Trevor was a little bit more idealistic, and Batman's kind of to himself as well, you know. So, and he can be very, very ruthless in how he speaks to people. So, you know, but I guess they're going to have something going on. I really would be interested in seeing how Batman and Diana play off each other. And if they do, it can kind of form some kind of buddy relationship of some kind. But it's definitely something that's interesting. I love that dynamic because Batman's one of those figures. You remember, Batman's mind is never always there. He's never, as much as people like Batman because he's a flawed hero. He's mainly an anti-hero. And the one thing that's interesting about Batman is he's never really cognitively all there. As Arthur Curry says, you're out of your mind, Bruce Wayne. And he always calls him Bruce Wayne for reasons unknown to me. He doesn't call him Batman. So that, again, anytime you see a character calling another character by a certain name, it's interesting to me, you know, because Arthur Curry's kind of forcing Batman. He's kind of rough and crude himself. He's kind of forcing Batman to have to acknowledge his humanity, which is Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne is the human part of him. The Batman is more the monster, the beast part of him. You know, he's a monster. So when we talk about gods and monsters and men and devils, Batman's more a devil and a monster, because his thing is to rule. Even though he doesn't try to scare the average citizen. He's definitely trying to scare the criminal, and so that makes him a monster. That makes him a devil. So Batman is a man, but he's more of a monster and a devil than he is a man. He's trying to be the criminal's greatest nightmare, which is what you saw in the beginning of the movie. You saw it when the guy, he was chasing down the guy. And by the way, the guy, I never got to mention this. You know, I thought that Batman left the guy and he was just allowed to leave, but the guy was tied up. Batman tied him up and he was hopping around talking to Batman, but he was already captured. And then Batman leaves him on top of the rooftop. It's really funny. But yeah, Batman is, you heard what he wanted from the criminal. He wanted fear from him, and that's what he got. He got fear from him, and that's what brought the parademon to him. So, you know, Batman is that's what he is, a monster. They think of him as a vampire. They think he sucks the blood of criminals, and there's all kinds of things going on because they never really see Batman. You know, they just hear about him. All right. Let's see what else we have here. R2 Lemonin says she had faith on him coming back. Not too sure what that's, whose fate on. Oh, Wonder Woman on Superman. But she didn't want Superman to come back, though. She didn't want him to come back. And that's what caused the altercation between her and Batman in the movie. Betty White, what's your P.O. box? What? Betty White, don't go away. Please, 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 please. MC80s Entertainment. What danger was on his hand? He's Captain. Oh, that's out of a pair. Yeah. You saw the same green stuff on Flash. You saw the same stuff when Batman was capturing. It's just the blood of the parademon. That's what keeps them running. Betty White, what's your P.O. box? What's your P.O. box number? P.O. box. P.O. box. You lost me again. What was that? Vega Thorn, still think CGI Superman's mouth needed more work done. Yeah, but I gotta admit though, I've seen this movie 5 times. They've improved it quite a lot since the first time I saw it. It was really blatant. I guess it was because I've seen it in 3D and I started looking at it in 2D. R2 Lemonin, Lewis had faith on Superman coming back for her when he was going to help the League at Russia. Yeah, she actually cautioned him. Yeah, she cautioned him. So yes, I think that what I want to say about Lewis again, there's so much depth to the psychological depth to these characters, and I like that. You know, it's not your typical superhero movie. It's got a lot of depth to it. I think one of the nice things of Lewis, I didn't finish saying what I had to say about Lewis, but it's okay. One of the nice things about Lewis that I liked about this movie is that you saw at the end of the movie, she's with the mother of Superman, with Martha Kent. I thought that in this movie, she would have been staying by Martha's house, but Martha actually lost her house. So that's, I mean, come on now. But one of the nice things about Lewis, she lets Clark leave, right? When he was altercating with the Justice League, they fly off. And Clark comes back to his home. Now, he doesn't know the home is sold and they don't even have the home anymore. He doesn't know that. But notice how Lewis even allows him to go into the house. They go into the house. If obviously he gets the shirt, the Superman shirt from 1978. And they have a discussion outside the house because, of course, Clark has been in a casket for a long while. And the nice thing about Lewis is at the end of the movie, we see her relationship with the mother, and they're looking back at Bruce and Clark, right? And they're smiling. And then you realize, wait a minute. Lewis has known Bruce since Superman's death. Bruce is one of the guys who took him down from on top of the ledge where Doomsday was and actually presented him to her. Also, Diana did. And it just dawned on me that Lewis didn't know who Bruce was. Lewis knew Batman. She's never seen Bruce until not even in the funeral, because Bruce was staying on the outskirts. Bruce wasn't there. This is the first time she's actually looking at Bruce Wayne. Well, I guess she had a discussion with Bruce Wayne before I negotiated with her to see Superman and calm him down. But she never really corresponded with Bruce Wayne before that. You know, I don't know if you guys realize that. She's seen Batman. She's corresponded with Batman, but she hasn't corresponded with Bruce Wayne. So I thought it was very interesting as well. Vegathon says, do you still consider Lewis to be the key the Flash was speaking of in BVS, or just an unfinished Flashpoint thread? No, she is the key. And that was a closure from BVS, which I thought was nice, because she was the key. That's why Bruce Wayne called her, because he remembered the dream, obviously. So that is a follow through with BVS, no doubt about it. I hear some people talking about Flashpoint and Flashpoint and Flashpoint, but honestly speaking, I think that Flashpoint is going to be its own movie. All right, if they choose to want to follow up on an alternative solution because Batman didn't form the team or something, I don't know. But Flashpoint is going to be its own movie. I think they have a draft of it somewhere. MC80s Entertainment says, do you think we'll see the return of Batman's armor used to fight Superman? It was so cool in BVS. No, I don't think so. It's there in the background in Justice League. If you look carefully, you'll see it. But I think he's looking for armor that's much more. You saw his tech armor that he used to fight the parademons with. After he changed his clothing, Diana came in. He came out in the tech armor. So I think he's going to try and get something lighter so he can move more in. And that's more resistant to the parademons, because the parademons threw him all over the place. He was getting banged up a lot with the tech armor. So he's gotten lighter, lighter. So it's Bruce Wayne and Alfred. They both are equally competent. Like Alfred does certain things, but Bruce can do them too. And Bruce fixes they don't call it the Flying Fox, they call it the carrier, troop carrier. So they work in tandem with one another, I noticed. Betty White, how are you doing today, Chris? R2 Lemon. The BVS armor could be the prototype for the Hellbat armor in future movies. Well, like I said before, I think he already, he's fought Steppenwolf. Well, he hasn't fought Steppenwolf. He's, one thing about Batman, he knows his limits. He let them deal with, even when he was talking to them as they came out of the carrier jet, he was like, look, you guys, I'm going to go take out the tower. You guys handle Steppenwolf. You know what I'm saying? Just do it. Don't look for me, right? And he goes off with the carrier jet, and he knocks down the shield, and he knocks down the tower, and he goes in there, and he broadcasts a signal of fear that the parademons chase after, right? But I think that Bruce Wayne knows what battles to pick and with who. He can handle a parademon or two. He ain't handling Steppenwolf, and he knew that. So he'd seen, he had good enough experience now fighting superpower beings. He fought Doomsday. He was in the mix with Doomsday, at least. He fought Superman. He knows these guys are way above his league. So he's not even going to try and go toe-to-toe with those guys. And it makes sense. Again, a sensible Batman they made here. Vegathon, who do you consider the leader of the league currently, and what member should join next? All right, now, the actor said there wasn't any particular leader. I truly believe that Clark is going to be the leader of the team. I think Clark is going to be the leader. However, he's going to be a leader in one aspect. Really, it's the Trinity that's going to be the leaders. You're looking at Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman. They're the leaders of the Justice League. They've always been the leaders of the Justice League. They're the oldest members of the Justice League. Wonder Woman has a lot of wealth of wisdom, experience, and she can fight like crazy. So she probably is the tactical fighter. When it comes to Superman, he's the most powerful. So I expect him to lead out on certain things where he needs to clean up, or he needs to lead the way physically to take down certain opposition. And Batman is the tactical arm. He's the guy with the strategy and the investigative skills and so on. And I think he'll lead out in every respect. So I don't think there's any specific leader of the team, but I think those three are going to be in the forefront. they're the forefront. And remember, BVS introduced them, and then Zack Snyder comes back again, introduces them again. Huge fanboy moment for me when I saw them all standing on that ledge thing, and then we saw the two different perspectives, looking up at them as if they're gods, and then them looking down, beholding. It's really cool. And then of course, just seeing the close-up of the Trinity again was really awesome. I don't know if Whedon was responsible for that close-up, but I know that the pan-out scene, that was definitely Zack Snyder, both ways. Whedon did some touch-ups with the CGI and certain effects and even maybe the color scheme, but I don't think effectively, like they said, 80 to 90% of this movie was Zack Snyder. I mean, Whedon touched up about maybe 10 to 20%, maybe 20%. I don't even think so much. Vega Thorn. Or maybe the villain they could fight is Brainiac. Yeah, I mean, it's open. It's open. They can even come with some obscure villain. It doesn't matter. Remember, Lex Luthor is forming, you can call it the Legion of Doom, you can call it the Secret Society, you can call it the Injustice League, but he's forming a league. So that in itself is just awesome. And remember, the Suicide Squad's still in that DC universe. All right, and we know Green Lanterns are somewhere around, and that's the 7th member. So we saw Green Lantern in the beginning of the movie. We know the Green Lanterns are around, but they're not in Earth sector right now, patrolling it. So it's open. It's open. Late to Lemonin says some recent Screen Rant article said that the Wonder Woman is the leader of the League, but that's just Screen Rant. The leadership should indeed be shared around the Trinity. Definitely, that's what I'm saying. A lot of the actors were pointing to Gal Gadot as the leader of them, like she's the leader of the team. She's the leader of fighting. When it comes to fighting, she's the one that says, okay, this is what we're going to do. But when it comes to actually doing some impossible things, Superman like clears the way for them. And he's like the guy that drives the hope, the inspiration. He can handle the big guns, you know what I mean? So he's the leader in that respect. And he's the guy that really raises the team, gives them hope. Like when he showed up on the scene, it's a totally different story. Like the whole movie changed when Superman changed. Ended up against all over. I mean, Vega says, I heard it may be a while before the Justice League. Do you think it's true? It's very possible. And it depends on how the movie does well. Would say whether they fast track it or not. I'm probably having discussions on just their approach to movies and everything, whether they're going to engage in this universe, and they're going to have discussions. It depends on how this movie performs at the box office that will determine what exactly is going to happen. If you ask me, we, the fans, have a lot of say in how this universe goes forward. Clearly, Warner Brothers is listening to the fans right now. And I hope they take a mental note that fans of, especially Zack Snyder and some other directors like David Ayer, they don't want their visions diluted down because, Warner Brothers is looking at demographics. So I'm hoping that they take that to heart, understand that there's a solid fan base out there that really wants unfiltered this kind of tone of movie, a more realistic, a more true world version that doesn't have to be hee hee ha ha. We got the hee hee ha ha with Marvel. We don't need it. I mean, I acknowledge that there are funny moments in Justice League, but really I don't see the film as a funny film. I don't see it as a comedy. I definitely don't see it as some superficial actual thriller. It was mostly always deep to me, and it was very, very sober as well. I think it's a very sober film. So that's just my perspective on things. Guys, I got to go in a couple minutes. I really do. Betty White says, go check Courtney 2020 Able channel on YouTube now. Vega Thorn says, this film a good tone, the rest of the universe should follow. Is this film a good tone, the rest of the universe should follow? Listen, first of all, you got to understand, this is Zack Snyder film. So it was supposed to follow the tone that Zack Snyder intended for it. Okay? Whereas, you see, the thing I like about the DCEU is this. The DCEU has many different directors, and different directors give you different feels. You see what I'm saying? David Ayer gave you a different feel to what Patty Jenkins gave you. And I just truly feel Zack Snyder's feel, it's in this film. It was a collaboration, so but I'm glad it was a Zack Snyder film. Now, was it toned down and dumbed down a bit? Yes, no doubt about it. But all of the Zack Snyder elements that make his films what they are reflective, deep, and so on, they're all in there. So I'm not worried too much about that. But I would have preferred, just my honest opinion from all the trailers and everything, I would have preferred if Zack Snyder was allowed to give his full vision on the screen. Meaning, well, I say full vision, but I mean his full project. His vision was on the screen. But what he really wanted to do with this film, that's what I would have preferred to see. Okay, to be honest with you guys. But once again, Warner Brothers has laid out, and Zack Snyder agreed with what they laid out. If he did agree with it, he wouldn't have been thinking of, or he would have said, no, no, hours, no less. He put down James Cameron. I don't see, because let me tell you something. I don't want to go to the cinema and watch a cut, and then afterwards that I got to pay extra money out of my pocket to see a director's cut of them. That's just one of us making more money. You know what I mean? This is almost royally backfired on them, because they basically sort of ticked off a certain section of the audience that thinks that, you know, what they're looking at is a washed down, dumbed down version of Zack Snyder film. So, I mean, that's what put this movie in peril. I'm going to say straight up with you guys. What put this movie in peril is the fact that there's a fan base that's dedicated to these films, that would watch these films and invite people to watch these films, who some of that fan base got disillusioned. It's not the critics. You can't blame the critics, because the critics can just about every DC film, but they managed well. And I think Warner Brothers, in deciding again to go down the route they literally sort of alienated a certain group of people because their PR wasn't good. It wasn't enough. So negative PR of this film was circulating. I never rebutted it immediately. One thing about Patty Jenkins is anytime something negative came, he immediately rebutted and set the record straight. She knew Warner Brothers wasn't going to do it, so she did it. And that's the thing Pat Jenkins had up. And Pat Jenkins fought for the movie she wanted. She fought for what she wanted in her vision. Zack Snyder's not that kind of guy. He doesn't stand up to these executive people that are passionate, why film needs long. Seems that, or it doesn't seem as bad. So I know Zack Snyder doesn't make a short film, and he said this film is straightforward and so on. I know he doesn't make short films. He shoots a lot. He's maybe 5 hours of footage on this film. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that at the end of the day, because he didn't really, at least as far as I know, speak out against the 2-hour-long version, I can't fault Warner Bros. When they decide we want a 2-hour-long version. And they give him plenty of notice, so you can't fault him for that, right? The Henry Cavill mustache scenario, again, that happens in cinema, and really it's not as distracting as people make it out to be. So, big a thought, is a Zack Snyder cut still a possibility? Well, that's up in the air until I see how this movie performs. If this movie performs well enough, and well enough is a tall order, because it's like 900 million we're talking about and upwards. If it performs that well, yeah, you get a Zack cut for sure. There's a lot of stuff that was left on the cutting room floor. Zack would have had to cut it anyway. You're gonna get a lot of goodies for this movie. So it makes $1 billion. You're going to already guaranteed a lot of goodies. The cut, and then they may give either an extended or a director's cut as well. So you can be able to compare the 2 cuts, right? I would assume, because there's no director's cut right now, but I would assume that if Zack Snyder shows his cut of the film, I think a lot more people who are BVS fans will like it, and I'll like it more than this current version, the theatrical cut. But especially the theatrical cut is that collaboration between different people on different sides of the aisle, which I think is beautiful. And I'm really wishing the best for Joss Whedon, because I think Joss Whedon worked ass off on this. Zack Snyder too, but I'm just saying, now taking Zack Snyder and pitting his name against Joss Whedon, which I don't think is right. When you look at the final quality of film that we saw, I thought it was a good, solid quality film. Dare I say, probably one of the better DCEU movies of present time. So it's right up there. I mean, it's ahead of Man of Steel, in my opinion. It's ahead of Wonder Woman. It's ahead of Suicide Squad. It's just not it's not right in the league of BVS to make the edition. But theatrical cut, I think it's even better than the BVS theatrical cut for the average person. And because it ties in so many things in such a short space of time, I think it's a remarkable piece of work. And I love that it's a collaboration as well. So there's so much to talk about and gloat up. Just with Ezra Miller recently coming out as gay and Iris West seems to be cut from the movie, do you think they'll open the door to diversity and introduce Flash as gay in films? No, I don't think so. You can be gay and play a straight character. You can be straight and be a gay character. So no, I don't think so. And Flash, I don't think Ezra Miller said he was gay. I think he said he was queer, which is a little bit different. Gay and queer are two different things. Basically, he goes where the wind blows. to be more straightforward with you. He swings that way. He's a swinger, and he likes weed, so he likes to smoke. But with me, I just think that, you see, when you're playing a character, right? I don't think it's all about it's about staying true to the character. Like people are talking about Wonder Woman being a lesbian or a bisexual, and she's a queer too. Like those things are secondary to what these characters represent. And so it's not really important whether they're gay or straight, in my opinion. Of course, Warner Bros. May take this and now decide to do something weird like that. Like I wouldn't be as interested in a queer Wonder Woman. Let's just put it that way. You know, because all through the history of time, people have perceived Wonder Woman as straight because she had Steve Trevor. So for people to introduce that, I don't think that's something that the general audience will receive very happily with open arms and be like, yay, Wonder Woman is gay. I don't think so. I just don't think so. Same for the Flash. You know, these are well-loved characters, and still the majority of people who watch these movies don't think of them that way. Understand? So that'll be a while before you get a gay Flash or something like that. But there are gay DC characters out there already that have been, you know, openly gay. So maybe they can introduce some of those if they want. But I don't think that's a topic that the average person is really interested in seeing. But that's something we'll know about in time. Our true necessity is as optimists. That's what today's originally to be filmed. For any that cause changes. First of all, let me just, the difference between this Justice League film and other comic book movie films where they talk about hope, optimism, all these. By the way, Zack Snyder was saying that these characters are full of hope. You heard John say the same thing. I love these characters because they're full of hope. But the significance and the weight of that hope is what I like about these characters. It's hope and optimism in the face of darkness, despair, hopelessness, and fear, hatred. That's the difference between what this Justice League film is speaking about and the average comic book movie, which is not really reflecting that. So it's not that we have hope and optimism and it's an escapism so you can feel good. This movie embraces and acknowledges the darkness in our world, the hopelessness in our world, the despair in our world, the racism in our world, the partisanship in our world, the nationalism in the world. It comes right off of BVS and the same topics BVS was talking about. But in the face of that, in the face of imperfect characters, in the face of characters who initially don't gel well with each other, we get hope and optimism. And increasingly the film lights up as the hope and optimism starts to come to the fore. And it's challenged to its limit, and it actually was nothingness in the fight scene with Steppenwolf, where he gets all the mother boxes, and you're like, man, y'all guys are so stupid. You know what I'm saying? Now, Zack Snyder would have gone deeper into that and made it even more obvious, I think, in his cut, because I heard it was longer and there was a lot more detail, and certain moments would have been held a little longer. But at the end of the day, it's all there. And that's the difference in this film. with respect to hope and optimism, and why you leave so hopeful and you feel hopeful even as you're living in this world today. That's the difference between this film and your average superhero entertainment story, which is limited to what you see in that fantasy world on the screen. Okay. Yeah. Yep. R2 Limited says MC80s entertainment. Gay men have played straight men before, and straight men have also played gay men. Yes, absolutely. That's what acting's about. Betty White, check out Courtney 220 AG Dollars channel now. Betty White, we're not really doing spamming of advertisements, so please stop doing that. Stop spamming here. Vega Thorn, who should play the Reverse Flash in a future Flash film? I have no idea. I throw that out to you guys. You discussed that in the chat section. Archer Lebanon says, Betty White, I tried to Google that and came up with nothing. Betty White is right now doing an advertisement for some vacuum something. That's what's really going on. Vega Thorn, Betty White, is the channel about dolls? No, I don't think it's about dolls. I think it's some business thing. They're trying to sell stuff. So, Betty White, stop spamming on our page, please. All right, so there you go, folks. Thanks for the discussion. You can share this video with other people. There's so much depth to this movie, and that's what I appreciate about it. That's why I like to talk about it. I can't stop talking about it. And, BVS, people couldn't stop talking about BVS, and I think this movie's, people are going to talk about this movie for a long time to come. And it's controversial again, unfortunately, mainly because it's so strange, but jumping in the beginning of the movie, which I really loved, and it fit in, the movie's tone and everything fit in so nicely. And it's such a good movie, and yet there's so much negativity about it. And that's the thing that just gets me sometimes. Jet Snyder, he spoke about the movie and how WB interfered. I think he called it meddling with the movie. I think he's being a little bit too raw. I don't think Zach would use those words. And the reason is because, yeah, Jet was working on it, but I don't think he was a director, and I don't think he saw the big picture on what they were trying to do. And I think he's all caught up in what they left out of the movie because he feels like there's a lot of work put into that. But, you know, you have to know what the executives and what the people's, what sort of agreement Zach had with them. Again, he's just speaking from somebody who's working with Zach, so it's all good. But nonetheless, Zack Snyder liked the tweet. I mean, Joss Whedon liked the tweet where Steppenwolf was a poor villain, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Joss Whedon necessarily agrees with everything the person's saying. He's just saying, I acknowledge you. I don't know if that's what Zach's doing with his son, but I'm so glad his son went and saw the movie. And I hope Zach goes and sees the movie too, even though he knows what mostly it will be. And what I made out was that did he enjoy the movie and recommend it to people. Maybe this is Chris of me and his perspective on how it would be. I don't know. He would thought it would have been universally accepted. Zack Snyder's take. I don't know if Zack Snyder's take is universally accepted. I know Zack goes into a lot of work with his movies, but they have of late been divided, at least between the critics and the fans. Nonetheless, a lot of people really liked Justice League on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm amazed that all the people who actually saw it, a lot of people put good reviews. They didn't think it was the perfect movie, but they really enjoyed it. And that's a good thing to know. The critics panned it, but the average person, at least on Rotten Tomatoes, I don't know how long that will last, actually enjoyed it. So that's cool as well. And I haven't really been hearing Marvel fans speak ill of it either. So having that little Marvel ingredient in there with Joss Whedon, even though some of it annoyed the crap out of me, it made for more people to engage with it. So WB's got something going, but I think they need to, how do I say it? They need to work with their directors. Let's put it that way. They need to work with their directors. I know they're trying to do everything above board and screenings and all that, but they need to work with their directors. That's all I'm going to say. And you work with your directors. Don't try to have a Marvel formula way of doing things. Marvel have their formula. They have directors, but they have their formula and they override everything. We want the DCEU to show the character of the directors that are directing the films, to show the character of the script writers. And WB does take risk. I give them that. Thumbs up on the risk taking. And I think they should continue down that road of taking risks, you know, so you can get this variety, this rich variety of stories. because it's all about stories in the end. Anyway, guys, I got to go. You guys have a great one. Have a good evening. I got a video I'm going to post up which has to do with Batman and the critique that he is campy and he's cheesy and he's the butt of jokes and he's a joker. I'm trying to get this movie up, this video up, so that you guys can see it. You know, I'm going to try again, a third attempt. If I failed the first time, the second time, we're going to go a third time. You know what I'm saying? All right, people. Peace. Peace in the Middle East. Peace all around the world. Love you guys. You guys have a great one.